what are the security implications of this oil company's continued dealings with Iran? Well, helping them with weapons of mass destruction. Let's bring in our friend Frank Gaffney, former Assistant Secretary of Defense under President Reagan. Frank is, of course, president of the Center for Security Policy. Frank, I started this story on Friday. I took it out of the Wall Street Journal. I continued it on the radio on WABC on Saturday, and we are continuing this story here on Monday with your help. BP will not comment. The Journal has now filed 2 stories. This is the Wall Street Journal, that BP is, in fact, trading oil with Iran, thereby providing dollars so that Iran can develop nuclear weapons of mass destruction. BP will not comment. So I want to ask you, Frank Gaffney, is BP trading with Iran?
As best I can tell, it is. What we're listening to, I think, in this kind of back and forth, Larry, is the bare surface skimming of a much larger problem. We've got hundreds of companies, many of them Western companies, quite a few of them in the oil or energy sector, but many of them not, that are enabling this regime. They are providing life support to it in the form of investment or in the form of exploiting the oil, gas resources of the country. And you're absolutely right. That's translating into the ability of this regime to pursue its nuclear ambitions and thereby to put itself in a position to act on threats like wiping Israel off the map and bringing about a world without America.
Yeah, I mean, that's the key point. And, of course, it's going to be hard currencies, most likely dollars. Now, I asked rhetorically on Friday night, since we know that BP is trading with Iran and providing them with the financing for the nuclear weapons of mass destruction, with Congress having 20 hearings on BP completely screwing up the Gulf of Mexico, I asked, why doesn't Congress have a hearing on this? And lo and behold, today's Wall Street Journal, U.S. House proposes penalties on firms with Iran oil deals going through the Pentagon, which is the single biggest consumer of oil. Now, BP makes a fortune off the Pentagon. What's the outlook for this? Frank, does it make sense to you that we punish BP and others this way?
Well, I think you're going to find that the Pentagon is going to be very hard-pressed to translate rapidly its present reliance upon BP into some new kind of relationship with an oil provider, particularly in some of the distant places around the world that the Pentagon has to operate.
Why don't we just give BP 60 days? Give them 60 days. Give them 60 days to put an end to this. They'll figure out a way. Yeah. Give them 60 days, Frank. Look, they've wrecked the Gulf, but more importantly, as you well know, weapons of mass destruction are even greater sins than oil spills. And as you said, we're talking Israel, we're talking Europe, we're talking the United States, we're talking about the national security. Now, BP won't even comment on this, Frank. That is how duplicitous they are. So I ask you, I mean, I don't know if these are Democrats or Republicans. I don't have enough information yet. But this is the right thing to do, is it not? Let us finally clamp down. We got Iran on its knees. They're having trouble financing stuff. Let's go the next step.
Larry, I couldn't agree with you more about the rightness of what you're proposing. The only thing I would suggest is that you broaden the lens, because what we're seeing, in fact, some of the reporting out of the Wall Street Journal since you started working on this story, has been that Total, the French giant state-owned oil company, has been actively involved in Iran, of course, for years, made tens of billions of dollars there, and are trying to cover their tracks in terms of some of the continuing activity they're doing.
And Dutch,
same with the Dutch state-owned company, Royal Dutch Shell. And here's the thing, so is all 3 of the major Chinese state-owned oil companies, CNOOC, CNPC, and Sinopec. Probably, I think, Russia's Lukoil is doing the same. In other words, we're seeing many companies providing the kind of life support that we cannot tolerate if we're serious about stopping this threat.
But don't we have to give them?
If we are, we should take actions like you're talking about.
I'm saying we have to give them a stark choice. You know, say BP, you want to trade with Iran? Okay, we can't stop you.
We're going to do everything in
You're British chartered, but you can't trade with us. You can't trade oil with our Pentagon. You can't do any offshore drilling in the Gulf of Mexico. In other words, it has to be with national security and nuclear weaponry on the line, Frank. It has to be our way or the highway. I mean, isn't that conclusive? Yeah. This is a moment with BP and all their terrible behavior and mistakes that continue to this day. This Gulf thing is becoming a total outrage. Now's the time to come in on this other thing. We got them by the short hairs. They're in the crosshairs, Frank. I want to go after them. You'll make a point globally, Frank Gaffney. That's what I'm saying. You'll make a point that I don't care whether it's Obama or who. Make a point for U.S. security.
Yeah, you're talking about making an example of them. That's one way to make a point. Another way to make the point, which I would argue is going to be even more effective, is take the law that's already on the books, that successive presidents, going back to President Clinton, have consistently waived. Which is to say, if you're a company doing business, more than $20 million worth of business in Iran's energy sector, the government of the United States currently has the ability to do exactly what you're talking about, which is to say, give them a choice. You can do business with those guys who are trying to kill freedom-loving people, including ours, or you can do business with us. Which is it going to be? Well, it's high time, Larry, that we do exactly that. The Iran-Libya Sanctions Act should be implemented, not waived.
Right. I spoke on the radio to Newt Gingrich this past weekend. He said exactly the same thing you said. The laws are on the books. By the way, it's worth noting, about $900 million a year in oil from BP is purchased by the Pentagon. And over the last 9 years, according to today's Journal article, I'm just reading from it, $7.2 billion have flowed to BP. What I want to know, Frank, is of that money that our Pentagon pays them to purchase oil, how much of that has flowed to Iran? $7.2 billion. How much of that has gone to Iran, and how many nuclear weapons will that buy, Frank? That's the tough question that nobody's asking.
I don't know. The short answer is I don't know, but it's got to be billions, and you can bet that some percentage of that is not just used to suppress brutally the people of Iran, is not just used to support terrorism against American troops in Iraq and our forces in Afghanistan and people elsewhere in the Middle East, suppressing the people of Lebanon. It's being used to build the capacity to destroy nations, including ours, Larry, and that's the thing that we've got to be addressing globally. With all due respect, not just in the micro case.
I agree with that broader point.
Example.
All I'm saying is, if we bankrupt them, it'll give the reform movement that tried to elect a president not long ago a major step up. That's the way we can do it. Frank Gaffney, terrific stuff.
Should have been done long ago.
Thank you ever so much. We will report more on this story. We're going to cover it on a nightly basis.